And you know, it's only been since Burkholder has been here and since Gillespie has been here. I mean, I've been doing what I could, but we have so many students who come in and they are interested in learning to dance technically, and then they want to perform in theaters, and so for years our performances were all here on campus. Let's see, I don't even remember. It must have been in 2005, 2006. I got a really nice grant. It was in the Wisconsin Bicentennial. I got a very nice grant from the Bader Foundation to do dances to go in the park. And we did lighthouse dances. And we have a wonderful lighthouse over here, as you know.
Yeah.
But there are other wonderful lighthouses as well. We did the same performance down at the wonderful lighthouse in Racine, Kenosha. And we had a plan to go up to the lighthouse in Door County, but that was more time out of a Saturday than most of the kids could handle, so we didn't do that one. But then we did maybe 3 performances at this lighthouse, and so that pushed us off the postage stamp a little bit, which was, I think, kind of the beginning of things. And then our dear Simone is, she went to Washington Park when they had the upset there and helped them create a healing dance for them to be together and to bring an aesthetic perspective to what had happened to that neighborhood. And of course that's the huge thing that is happening in the edgy arts right now, is they're dealing with, well, there's social justice issues, of course.
Right.
There are all kinds of issues in a community that are being addressed artistically by musicians and dancers and actors and directors and clay and painting and exhibits and everything. To call people's shaped and felt attentions to these issues that we need to address as a nation, as a community. And then when you all arrived and did the Friday nights, the first Friday night, and then you did the stuff over at the gardens over it's off of Oakland.
Not the Urban Ecology Center.
The Urban Ecology Center.
Yeah.
You were doing things there.
Yep.
And Maria's doing our hyper locals, and every local is in a different hyper.
Right.
And she's found lots of places, and it's just it's as though this next generation of faculty, permanent faculty here, are very much at the cutting edge of what the arts need to be doing. We don't need to haul the whole community up here to our theaters. We probably have almost as large an audience for our events as we need just from non-majors who come to see these things to get exposed to them.
Right.
And it's the getting the stuff out in the community where that's where it's at. That is this next
right.
great push, and it makes for also some interesting new content that is sometimes a little difficult to persuade the majors that they need to be alert to, because their tendency is to want to do it the way it was in their dance studio, which was get ready for a show and get out there and do your stuff and let your parents and everybody cheer wildly for you. And that's a beautiful thing too, and we certainly don't want to lose that, because we want to keep it possible for wonderful dance companies to thrive.
Right.
And they make powerful statements to all of us. But it's just that we also need to do these smaller production things, and even some that are improvised that go out into community settings. That's where it's at. And because there are now 3 of the tenured faculty who do that kind of thing. I haven't been able to do that for a few years because there have been too many other governance things I've been involved with.
But your heart is there.
Well, it's being taken care of. It doesn't need my blah blah.
Well, that was a great little start. So what we're going to do with this too is just to make sure we get some nuts and bolts from you as well, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and feel free to just
blah. Okay,
yeah,
you could
do
edit
it.
You could
Right, exactly.
cut out that part.
So
of it.
one thing is, we just want to make sure and have this. Do we have permission to use your image and your words in our art piece?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your name?
My name is Marcia Parsons. Currently, it's been that for about 38 years, I guess.
And how long have you lived in Milwaukee, Marcia?
I've been at UWM, and that's why I came to Milwaukee. I was hired here at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in the dance department. I moved here in late July of 1979. So that's a while.
That is a while.
Yeah.
And what parts of Milwaukee or what neighborhoods have you lived in? Have you lived in the same spot?
Only on the east side, because I bought an old house in the historical preservation area that I love dearly, and I've lived there the whole time. But I've spent a lot of time out in, for instance, the public schools. I guess I've probably been in 50 different schools in Milwaukee Public Schools. And I've done concerts with students. I mean, their choreography. I got grants to do Summer in the Park, and the grants allowed me to pay grad students who were here in the summer a little something for being in the effort. And one of the things that I used to do in those, like the Lighthouse dance productions, I would create a sort of a joining thing for everybody who was dancing, a joining dance that they all did together that was very simple and that just sort of defined the space we were using. And we didn't have lighting because we always did these performances. They were in the summer. It was right as the sun was just beginning to drop pretty far in the west, and so we would go up until, there's that magic time in the evening when I don't know what it is about the light, but there are some plants that just absolutely glow in the dark and become kind of almost iridescent, and particularly over like in Lake Park, it's such a gorgeous thing. And families would come and bring their kids, and they got to the point that they'd bring sandwiches and eat. But I always created a dance that they had to do sitting out there. The audience had to do one. And their dance was something like, row, row, row your boat gently down the street. And their kids loved it. And finally the moms and dads would get in and were doing it too. And they didn't even get up. Nobody did, except the children. Some of them would get up and just really, because it was songs that they knew and movement that was obvious, that it went with the lyrics. And so we would do that. I'd teach that kind of at the beginning of the event. So that was kind of starting to move out into community schools and along the lakefront. I mean, the lake is, being a city next to the lake, that was a major reason I was happy to accept an offer to come here was because of Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I had about 3 years of childhood in Chicago, Evanston, and then we moved to a little town in Iowa that was on the Mississippi River. So if I'm not next to water, and my birth sign is I'm a Cancer birth sign, so it's water.
Right. Yeah. So you have these memories of once you moved to Milwaukee of really going out into community, creating dances that involve community.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any other memories of living in Milwaukee?
Yeah, about going out. And I went to a lot of the lakefront festivals and saw many of the local folk dance groups. The folk dancing in this community is powerful. It's really, it's like the Greek Orthodox Church, which is a Frank Lloyd Wright design. They have like 3 different dance groups, and adults and kids. San Saba Church, which is Serbian Orthodox, it's a wonderful place on the south side. And there's going to be, in a week or so, an international folk fair. And it's out at the state fairgrounds. And if I can get my son to take me out there, I plan to go and see the folk dancing again. And I will get in and do some of the folk dancing they're teaching. I spent a lot of years going every Tuesday night out to Hart Park Community Center to dance with the international folk dance groups. They would teach dances of many different countries. And it's just phenomenal, the amount of participatory dancing. That's what one of the 2, 3, 4 things that builds a community and holds it together is dancing together and singing and drumming together. And then around the campfire, telling stories together. Mm-hmm. And then finally, just honoring silence together. And it can be meditation or prayer or just silence and being in the same place together. It's kind of like when you go camping and people tell stories around the campfire, but then it's quiet for a while before people just sort of look at one another and nod and go crawl in their bedrolls.
Right.
So, I've done a lot of the dancing that I know of in this community. I used to love ballroom dancing. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal when I was in high school, but that was before the earth cooled off. And, our proms, you had to know how to waltz and foxtrot and jitterbug and all those good things. So, I've just always danced and danced with people and hoped that they wanted to dance. That's sort of it.
With all these places you have gone to dance and experience dance in different ways, are there places that stand out in your memory that hold a little more significance for you?
Well, I certainly see San Saba. And I certainly see the Hart Park Community Center. I certainly see, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. For about 6 years, I did the choreography for the play of Daniel. That was directed by Chuck Sullivan. And the singers, the play of Daniel is a medieval play that the Archbishop transcribed the medieval script and the medieval note so that current musicians could read it, and the singers, they didn't line up. That was a challenge. Because this was supposed to be an enacted, not just a here's the music and enjoy what it sounds like. And the cathedral at that time had a center aisle that went clear down to the altar and aisles up the side. And so getting the chorus, the singers who were not trained movers, getting them in that cathedral to be in a position, but to listen to each other, but to send the energy of the music into the domes of the cathedral. And it allowed me to, I looked at a lot of medieval paintings and artwork and found these wonderful poses, but then to get them to imagine what they were doing with it, and they did it. They did it, and people really loved it. We had big houses, and it was a gorgeous Christmas tradition for the years we did it. So, I don't know. It just seems to me that it was a very the community received it in their hearts really warmly.
And was the community, do you know where people came from to come to that? Were they a local community that came to that?
Well,
or did they come from near and far? Do you have any idea?
They came certainly from near. Mm-hmm. The cathedral's right across from the park where there is that jazz festival in the summer, I think. But there were a lot of people that probably were from the various Catholic churches, but there were people from everywhere. I can't say for sure where everyone came from, but I know there were some people here from Sheboygan, mm-hmm. who, because it was, the critics in the local paper said they hoped it would become an annual tradition, just like when the symphony and the chorus do the Messiah down at St. Joseph's. And I think there was hope that could happen, but that there has to be a certain underwriting of some funding to pay the musicians, because otherwise there are plenty of other jobs they could have during the holidays. And,
right.
So
you have these places in your memory that you went to and on a regular basis or recurring annually.
Oh, yeah.
What about nowadays? Are there any places that you go to now? Are they the same? Or are there new places that you frequent or that mean a lot to you?
Not too many new ones. The reason I do try to get out to the daytime performances, like of my colleagues who are performing off campus and in new places for me. I can't drive at night very successfully anymore, so they kind of have to be daytime things, or I have to, now that my son's moved home, and he's quite willing to drive me. He's very patient with his old lady, so and he enjoys some of the things too, but it just takes time. I love going to the Pabst Theater. The sight lines are so wonderful in the Pabst, and there's something about, of course, the architecture and the design of the place that's enchanting. That's probably my favorite theater in town. The Marcus is a wonderful place, and of course all the years been a season ticket holder of the Milwaukee Ballet, and of course, Dance Works formed from, Sarah Wilbur, who kind of got the thing launched, was a BFA student here, and she danced in a couple of my pieces, but when Danceworks was ready to do their first show, and they were, they didn't have a place. They didn't have the risers and the seats that they have now down there. It was just a blank studio. And they were kind of getting ready to produce, and they had no idea where it was going to be. And this was working up to this happened in like May or June, and we were in load-in in 254, we were in load-in. Ed and I were getting ready we had our concert, and I always hired the same lighting designer because they knew our board and knew our stuff, and the same tech director to do our chairs and our, I don't know how those risers ever survived those shows, but they did. And our same person to run the sound. And so I called up Sarah Wilbur or wrote her a letter or something, said, if you need a place to do your opening concert, you would be welcome to do it in our space. I will simply postpone the strike for a week because I have to pay to strike it whenever we do that. But you would have to understand, you have to hire the same lighting person, you have to hire the tech director. Those are the 3 people you're going to have to hire because they know their way around our space. And so that's what they did, and that's where their first concert was in our little black box theater. And so that was wonderful. Deb Lowen, Wild Space. Deb had been my student at the University of Illinois in my teaching methods class when I was on faculty there for a couple of years right after I finished my master's degree, before I went to Southern Methodist as head of grad studies, replacing Juana de Laban. And anyway, Deb and her husband were in New York, and she was looking for a city to settle in outside of New York. New York is a little intimidating, I think, for people trying to have families, and well, you guys have dealt with all of that, I'm sure. So, and she wanted to get a master's degree, and I had just written a master's program and taken it to the dean, and the dean had accepted it. And the reason it was the kind of master's program it was is I didn't have to go through all of the Madison approvals, was because there was an MFA in performing arts here, and film already was using it, and I don't know if theater was using it yet, but it's just it was a degree that already existed, and I just made the dance version of it. Okay, so, but I included, of course, technique and dancing, and improvisation and choreography, and dance history, and a dance aesthetics course of some. I don't remember what all was in the original, but Deb and her husband moved to Milwaukee, and she got her MFA here. She was one of our first students, and of course she very quickly, because she's highly creative, formed a company, and she got kind of a permanent site down at Lincoln High School. They let her have one of their studios in the evenings for 2 or 3 evenings a week to have a rehearsal space, and so that was quite wonderful for her, and it connected us to the schools. So many of the things that I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of design a system or a shape of a process